Awesome. Okay, so today we are talking IXL. I will preface all of this with there haven't been huge updates to IXL. So what I tried to do is collect some tips for best practices or like how to kind of get your IXL ready for the new year. I do have a couple updates or things that you may have missed in the last year. So we're going to go through a few of these items, actually jump into IXL and look through all of these. So these are my 10 tips for you. You're going to be able to actually do this in your IXL right now. So if you want to, log into Clever, get to IXL, you can actually do these things. We're going to look at resetting suggested skills. So this is like you've suggested a whole bunch of skills over the last year or couple years. How do I get rid of those skills? We're going to look at student dashboards, group jams, which we've talked about in the past, but I'm just going to remind you of some of the things that you can do with group jams. Same thing with leaderboards. We've done those in the past, but again, it's always a good reminder to have those. How we can share quizzes. We actually came out for IIB, I want to say it was like 2 years ago, to talk about quizzes. And this was like the #1 requested feature with quizzes was to be able to share it with other teachers. So I'll show you how to do that. Videos, how students access those or how you can access those. Games, same thing. I'm going to give a little SMART score public service announcement, skills analysis, and then finally we're going to look at some real-time diagnostics. And I realized that I spelled diagnostic wrong on that. So let's get started. Okay, so you have suggested skills all year, or you have skills that were suggested last year. Instead of having to go through and unstar all of those skills, there is a way for you to actually clear all of those suggestions. So I am going to log into Clever and then I log into IXL. It's going to take me to this dashboard. This is where I'm always going to land. A few things on this. I have 2 students. Those are my boys. So I'm not going to have a lot of questions answered or anything like that. And you might not have a ton of data because you're getting a new crop of students. But this is what your dashboard will look like once your students start practicing in here. So if we scroll down under teaching tools, you're going to see suggested skills. So your list probably is a bit longer than mine. Maybe it isn't, but your list, it might look a little different than mine. And all that we need to do is this clear all 6 suggested skills. I can also come here and just individually get rid of those suggested skills. Or like I said, just boom, wipe them all out, clear those suggested skills so that my students don't have anything suggested to start the year. So very easy to do that. Again, this is another great way to just make sure that your students are seeing what they should be seeing and not maybe some of those suggestions from last year or skills that you suggested to your students last year that don't really apply to students this year. So we've cleared all of those suggested skills. So that means when I go to look at those skills for students, all of that should be blank. I'm going to actually open up some of these skills here and just remind you when we're looking at, that's not what I wanted to do. When we are looking at a set of skills here, those stars are going to show up next to my skills, and I can choose to suggest those skills to individual students as well. So I don't necessarily have to suggest it to all students. I can suggest them to individual students also. I don't know if I'm going to have any on here, but for some of your skills, you may see, thought I caught one. Nope. You may see a little bar graph next to a skill. And that is that your students have already started practicing that skill. And if you click on the bar graph, you're going to be able to see what they've done. We'll talk about how to reset those things later also, but resetting skills is just going to be a good way for you to do some housekeeping. And again, keep that student dashboard really clean for them. All right, our next suggestion is going to be our student dashboards. This is actually, I feel like this is new. Maybe it's not new, but I definitely just figured this out when I was putting this slideshow together this summer. But did you know that you can actually view a student's individual dashboard? So you can see what their dashboard looks like without having to log in as them. So if I go back to my IXL and I hover over at a glance here, I have student dashboards, and this is going to show me all of my students. I just took off all of those suggested skills, so there's going to be no suggested skills for him here, but that's where those would show up. I see recent skills, like what did he recently work on? I bet Tyler maybe has some recent skills. Nope, that's okay. It's the summer. So we've got what skills is my teacher suggesting? What recent skills do I have? And what recommendations do I have? And then any study plans that have been linked to me as a student. If I scroll down, I can see like my week in review, any awards that I've earned, and all of that stuff. So let me know in the chat, did you guys know that you can actually see individual student dashboards in here? I wonder. Awesome. Okay. One thing I want to mention while I'm looking at this, because I know it's not in my slideshow, NWEA. We all know that there are some changes coming with NWEA this school year, which means like if you are in grades 3 through 8, your students would normally be taking NWEA. They are not. They're taking iLearn checkpoints. So kindergarten, first and second grade teachers, your students' NWEA scores will still be imported into IXL like they have been. So we've been doing that for years where we've got these personalized plans for our students. And those are still going to happen for kindergarten, first, and second grade students. So we'll be able to see, or those students will be able to see what skills they need to work on for NWEA. So keep that in mind. Those skill plans will still be available to you. Okay, so we have gone through 2 dashboard tips. The first is resetting suggested skills. And then the second one is that you can see your student dashboards. Okay, so let's talk about some engagement tools that are available in IXL. As I mentioned before, these tools are not new. They've been around for a little while, but there are some newer features to them. One big new feature with Group Jam is that our newer feature, I should say, they're now available on the iPads, which means I can launch a group jam and actually have my kindergartners and first graders on their iPads, and we can all be working on skills together. So if you don't remember what group jams are a way for you as the teacher to work on a single skill with your class. So I'm going to select a skill here. I'm just going to select a random skill, rounding. Great. So I select a skill and I choose what students are going to join me in this group jam. So I'm going to select all students and start my group jam. Then what it'll do is it'll let me know at the top that it's waiting for students to join. So I'll be able to see once those kids get in there and actually join that group jam. And then instead of everybody getting different questions, we are all getting the exact same question. So we're able to work on these problems together. And this is maybe even a good way to introduce a skill before you have the students individually practice those skills. So I've got this problem here. I'm going to have the students answer. And if you can see here at the top, it's very tiny, but I'm going to use my magnifier here. Right up at the top here, I've got this green check mark and red X. That will actually tell me how many students got it correct and incorrect. And I can see those analytics as a teacher. So that allows me to then just kind of do like a quick formative assessment. Once we answer this question, We can move to review, we can talk about this, and then I love this part. I can choose my next question. Do I want it to be the same level, easier, or harder? So I can select each of these. Now, depending on the question, there may not be an easier or a harder. You maybe have maxed out, or that this is just the level of the question. But I can choose then, where are we going to go next as a class? Then once we're all done, okay, so I want to end this group jam. Great. And then we can go through, and it has popped me right into that skill, and I can go ahead and assign that skill for my students. So this is, again, just an easy way to maybe introduce some skills to kids. Maybe you decide to do like 5 questions together, and then you're going to have them go on and do it on their own. If I'm looking through skills, so you saw when I launched that, I went to my IXL engagement tools, and then it was group jam right here. If I'm looking through skills like this, I can also start a group jam down here at the bottom. So there's 2 different ways for me to launch that group jam. It's going to take me to the same place where we started, but then it will let me assign that as a group jam for the students to participate in it as a group. All right, our next engagement tool is leaderboards. So out of curiosity, have any of you used leaderboards with your students? Go ahead and type in the chat if you have used leaderboards with your students. Okay, so my public service announcement with leaderboards is that you really need to know your audience, right? Sometimes competition in a classroom is fantastic. It everybody gets excited about it and we're good. Sometimes competition in the classroom is a bit much, and we don't necessarily want to fan the flames or put gasoline on the fire. So it's up to you to decide how you're going to use something like this. But what leaderboards allow you to do is create some goals for your students. So this is a previous leaderboard that we had. We called it the brother board, and I wanted to know like who is answering the most questions correctly. Like that was it. So we're going to look at all of the options for leaderboards, but you can kind of get an idea here of how it's going to rank students. So one thing to note, yes, it will rank your students, but then it will also give like certificates to those kiddos that have worked really hard. Let's let it open that little certificate here for Tyler. Oh, it opened on this window. So creates a little certificate for them. Great. They won the leaderboard. Again, you can decide how you want to use these. But when I get to my leaderboards, I'm going to click this add new board. So we've got some options in here. Okay. First thing is who's going to participate in this board? There might be a group of students in my classroom that are ready for a challenge, maybe like 5 or 6 kids, they're ready for a challenge. And I'm just going to create a leaderboard with those 5 or 6 kids. Like that's it, right? They're just going to be competing against each other and we're just going to see what happens. Okay. Maybe I'm going to do this for all students. I can decide that later, who I want to actually assign this to. Okay. Now select what to record. I'm gonna make this a little bigger. Select what to record. Okay. Number of questions, number of correct questions, time spent, number of skills proficient, and number of skills mastered. Number of questions. This one's a little difficult because it doesn't matter if the students got it right or wrong. It's going to count every single question that they do towards their total. So just something to note in there. Number of correct questions obviously is a little better because we're encouraging the students to master those questions, right? We're actually encouraging them to get the questions right, not just answer the questions. Time spent is a little, I don't know about this one. The only reason I would say that is because we probably all know a kid or have had a kid in our classroom that might go overboard with time spent, and we want to encourage healthy habits with IXL and not overuse of it. So really would be the case for all of this. So keep that in mind with time spent. Number of skills proficient. This is actually my favorite one because it encourages proficiency. And proficiency in IXL is going to be a 70, I believe so, a 70 or 80 or above. So it's not going to force the students to get 100 on that. It's going to be that 80 or above is going to be proficient. This again encourages students to get to a certain level and then move on to the next skill. However, this would require that students actually get to that proficiency level. So depending on the number of questions answered or the time spent, that may be different for each student. And then number of skills mastered, mastery is going to be that higher percentage. We'll talk later about SMART scores and my public service announcement for those. But just keep in mind that there are several different options with what you actually want to record. Okay, with all of these things though, let's say I just do number of correct questions. I know some kids that would go to the easiest skills in IXL and they would just start plowing through those kindergarten skills just to get correct answers, right? Just to get correct. And then they're just racking up the points and so on. What I can do is I can actually narrow down what skills will count in that leaderboard. So we say, yeah, I want the number of correct questions, but I only want it to be fourth grade math because that's what we're actually going through today. And then I maybe have some of those suggested skills, but those are the only skills that are going to count in our leaderboard are the ones that we should be practicing, not any below grade level or above grade level. So just some things to think about, and you may differentiate a little bit and include several grades in there, but we can decide like what specifically do I want to count. So like my middle school teachers, Kim, I'm thinking about you. Obviously math skills are not as important to you maybe, so we may only want to count those language arts skills and then again those specific grade levels. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose what dates, what's the date range for this. My suggestion is maybe do like a 6 weeks or a monthly challenge, because we've all been through like fitness challenges and stuff. The first few days you're like, yeah, I'm going to totally do this. And then maybe it trickles off and then you get a second burst or whatever. So give it some time. Don't make it super short because again, we want the students to be getting in the habit of practicing those skills over time. And then finally, just create my leaderboard and I'm ready to go. So now the students, when they get in, they're going to see, I'm going to actually create this one. And the students will see the leaderboard. I'm going to see any of those students that show up here. And then I can always end that leaderboard. This one happens to be defaulting to 7 days, but I can end the leaderboard if we need to end it a little early. View all my leaderboards here by seeing all of those that I have available to me. Okay, that's leaderboards. Okay, quizzes. In the chat, let me know if you have used a quiz before in IXL. All right, so let's look at quizzes. So again, in my IXL, so we've gone through this at a glance area, some of these engagement tools. I did not talk specifically about live classroom. Live classroom allows you to view if your students are like currently working in IXL. I've actually got students logged in. It's going to show me if they're engaged, if they haven't answered a question in a little while, or if they've answered like several questions in a row incorrectly and they may need some help on things. It's going to kind of group those students together for me. So this is just like a live view of what's happening while my students are independently working in IXL. So if I go over to quizzes, I'll do a quick overview of creating some quizzes, and then we'll look at sharing those quizzes. So when I get here, I'm going to create a new quiz up at the top. And what's wonderful with this is I don't have to write all of these questions. So I know what skills I want them to actually be working on. We'll do some language arts, grades. I'm going to go to 7th grade. We're going to talk about text structure. And then I want to go to this. So I choose my specific skill. And then I choose the level. So do I want it level 1, level 2, or level 3? Now I can choose level 1. Notice that it says sample question across here. And then I can also add a select number of questions. So maybe I want 3 questions that are all this E1 skill at level 1. And then I'll click add questions. Now it's actually going to show me the questions it will give my students. Great. If I don't like a question, I have an option here to generate a new question. If I decided, you know what, these are pretty similar. So for my 3rd question, I think I'm going to up the level a little bit. And now it's going to give me a new question at that 2nd level. So I'm able to add skills in here. Can I add different skills to the same quiz? Yes. So this plus button down here, I can choose a different skill, a different level, and add those questions as well. So I'm able to mix and match these skills within my quiz to create a quiz exactly how I want it to be. When I'm ready, I'm going to click review and publish. And then I can decide, do I want the question order to be the same for everybody, randomized, end the quiz at a certain time, so like a date and time, or I'm going to end it manually. And then how do I want the results to show up? Show the scores only, hide the scores, show the scores, and so on. And then I'll select the students and start the quiz. If I am not ready to start that quiz yet, I can always go to save and exit. So I've got some quiz drafts here. In my quiz drafts, if I click the 3 dots, this is where I'm going to get like some really good tools. So I can preview this quiz as a student. What's it going to look like for them? I can share it with the other teachers in my building. So I happen to be at Klondike, so I can share it with any of those Klondike teachers. I can create a copy of this. What if I have a student that has an IEP that says that they need a quiz read out loud to them? Or I've got a couple kids that go to a resource room and have quizzes read out loud. I'm going to just say print quiz. It is going to download a PDF of that quiz for me. I can make my copies. So here's my quiz. They can put their name on it. The quiz title is going to show right up here at the top. And then I send this down with them. Everybody has their own copy of that quiz. And the rest of the students can then take it on IXL. So those students that are taking it on IXL, it's going to automatically grade it. And then those handwritten quizzes, I will grade those myself. And then I can always create a copy and delete this quiz as well. So a lot of really good options in here, especially if you're going to really start using a lot of those skill suggestions. This is a good way to just like have a little consistency in how you're reviewing with students or any formative assessments that you might actually be using with students. This is also something that like maybe I am going to be absent for a day, so I'm going to suggest some skills to students. And then the following day, the first thing that we're going to do is take a short quiz on some of those skills that they should have been reviewing yesterday with the sub. So yes, so Christy, that's a great question. Christy asks Does it read questions to them? And it does. It actually doesn't matter what the level is. It will read questions to them no matter what. Obviously not on those printed quizzes, but that's the resource room, but it will actually read those questions to them. So if we look at any of our skills, let me just pop into one of my skills here. I will see a little microphone. So this blue microphone here is going to be attached to any text that's available in a question,
Select the picture that shows equal parts.
and it will read that question to them. We're going to talk a little bit later about some other accommodations for students that might need things read to them or things translated for them. So stay tuned with that. So that's sharing quizzes. So this just makes it a little easier if you are going to be maybe collaborating with others in your grade level or in your subject area, you're able to share those quizzes with them easily. This screenshot right here also shows you where you can see the results, results shown to students. So you'll actually see like what did the students see once they took that quiz. Okay, learning videos. Did you know that IXL has a whole library of videos about the content? Not every skill has a video, but they do have a lot of videos. So under the Learning tab, we're going to see videos under Math and videos under Language Arts. I'm going to go to Language Arts this time. I can see that Language Arts has pre-K through 8th grade videos, which is perfect for us because those are the only classes that use IXL. Videos for math are going to be 1st grade through pre-calculus, and we don't use it in high school. So really 1st grade through 8th grade. So we've got a ton of videos in here that are going to be available to your students. So if a student has a question on rhyming or a specific skill here, these are very small, but next to each of these videos, we're going to see the name of the video. And then we're going to also see, I see that LJ9. Those are the unique codes for each skill, unique codes for each skill. So that video and that skill go together. So if I click on this here, it's actually going to take me to that skill. I clicked on the LJ9, and then it's going to show me the video also. So I'm going to see this is like about a 5.5-minute video, and it's just going to give my students some instruction.
Today, I'm going to tell you a story about the magic E.
So those videos are attached to skills. Now, if a student is in a skill and they're like, I just need a little bit of extra help, you'll see up here at the top that we have both learn with an example, where it's going to give me some explanations, or watch a video, and that's already going to be attached. So they don't have to start in the videos. You don't even have to assign those videos. If you just launch a skill, or if the students launch a skill, they're going to see those videos attached right at the top. One thing I didn't point out is if I'm in a skill here, do I have to go back out to that list to actually assign it to students? And I do not. So right underneath where it says language arts for me, there's a star, and I can actually assign the skill right from this screen here. So I don't have to go back out to those other screens. So I am able to assign that skill there. So those are our videos. Next, we have games. Now I'm gonna tell you that there is a way to turn these off so we don't have to worry about students getting distracted easily, and then there's a way to turn them on. I am gonna go back though because Kim had a great question, and I'm gonna just double check. Is there a way to assign the videos only? It looks like there is not a way. The reason I know that is because there's no stars next to these videos. So I'd imagine that we're not able to like just grab a link to the video. Oh, wait, just kidding. I am able to share the video. So if I'm a secondary teacher, I can copy the link to the video when I share that with students. It looks like the skill is still going to pop up, but like the video will show first. So then you can tell them, like, I just share this. Yes. And then, like you said, Kim, just share it on my Canvas page. If I am an elementary teacher, I have this shared a classroom here, and I can just share that directly to Google Classroom. This is also maybe something that you look at sharing those videos with parents. So if you're going to be sending IXL skills home, that might be a reminder for parents that, hey, we've got some tutorials in here too. Like I said, not every skill has a video, but a lot of them do. So that's great. Okay, we're going to talk about games next. So we're going to see games under both math and language arts, and you might recognize some of these games because they are actually the ones from ABC Ya. So, very popular website that a lot of our students use. But these games in here are going to be attached to the grade level and then the subject, so math or language arts. They are not going to be attached to specific skills, but we'll see those games show up. Once I select the game, you'll see that this screen looks a little different than what the rest of my IXL looks like. And that's because, again, it's just embedding that from ABC. A great question that I'm having for myself that I do not know the answer to is what this looks like on the iPads. And K1 teachers, I will get back to you on that, what that looks like on the iPads. But these games are available for students through those skills, those learning tabs up at the top. Okay, SMART score. Um, I talked a little bit about this already, but I do want to just take a moment because this is something that we talk about internally a lot. We actually meet with our Canvas reps and talk about this a lot. And I just want to make sure that for those of you watching this video, I've at least informed you about best practices with this. First thing to note is that these SMART scores, while out of 100, are not a percentage. So if a student gets 100, that doesn't mean that they got 100% of the questions correct. Or if a student's at a 60, that doesn't mean they got 60% of the questions correct. The SMART score is calculated through the number of questions that they answer and then how well they answer those and so on. You've all been in the classroom for a little while, but if you're new to IXL, you may not realize that there can be some frustration with students when they've answered a certain number of questions correct, and then they answer one incorrect, and it knocks their score down quite a bit. We've all been there. I've had to explain to my own kids that it's okay. So, one thing that we recommend one thing that we recommend with SMART scores is to not make the goal 100. And you're thinking, well, that's weird. I thought we wanted mastery. Yes, for some students, 100 is going to be great. But proficiency on a skill, according to IXL, is 80. Okay, so think back at the times in your classroom when that between 80 and 100 is causing a lot of stress. If we had made the goal 80, could it have made the students maybe a little less or have a little less animosity towards IXL, maybe, right? Maybe you're like, you know what, yes, but I have like a group of honor students that I want to challenge a little bit. So 90, maybe 90 is the SMART score goal for your students. Just a little quick story. One of my sons in third grade, his teacher said he always gets 90 on his IXL. Like that's the goal, but I always tell the students that they can go above if they want. And he's only getting 90. And I said, he will reach the goal that you set for him and he's not going to go above it. He said, you told me to get 90, I got 90, and then I was done. I said, take 1 week and give him a goal of 100 and see if that changes. And it did. And so that was the motivation for him. He needed a goal that was set high or he wasn't going to go above 90 unless you asked him to. So you know your students, you know what you'd like to see out of IXL, but for many of us, 80 is going to be exactly what they need. So promise me this upcoming school year, as you're assigning IXL skills to students, that you at least consider what should my SMART score goal be for this learning experience? Is 100 the goal? Or is 80 the goal? And then maybe make some changes in your assigning for students. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. Let's talk about those SMART scores though, because we have seen this, especially from our middle school teachers, and honestly, our elementary teachers might see this as well. Students have practiced a skill before you assigned the skill. Or a student actually just practiced the skill in the previous year, and now you're saying, okay, well, for homework, I want you to get an 80 SMART score on this particular skill, and that student's already got the 80 because they did it previously. You still want them to do the assignment because you want them to maybe review some of that content. So how do I reset those SMART scores for my students? I go under analytics here. There's a lot here. This would be a great probably follow-up training. Maybe we'll think about doing that when Lori comes back, but this analytics area has a ton of information, especially if you've got kids that you're trying to figure out like what's going on with Johnny and what do we need to work on. But I'm going to show you one thing in this area. So under analytics, we're going to go to skill analysis. And this is going to list out all the skills that my students have worked on. I can search for those skills. I've got this third grade skill here. Is the word an adjective or adverb? I see I have one student that has practiced it. Johnny has already mastered this skill. Again, what if I want Johnny to go back and redo that skill? Right here under my class breakdown, I have reset SMART scores. This reset may only be for one student, or it may be for my entire class. So I can reset those SMART scores from my skill analysis. So I want you to jot this down on a little post-it note, stick it on your laptop, take it to school, because this will be a question that comes up for sure. We get this a lot from the middle school teachers because maybe the students have practiced something in elementary school and it's following them, and we want to reset some of those SMART scores so that the students start back at 0 and then can work their way up. If a student gets mad about it, just remind them that if they've mastered the skill once, they can do it again. All right, assessments, real-time diagnostics. So with NWEA looking a little different, and moving to iLearn, this might be something that you want to look at for this school year. Christy, that's a great question. She asked if there was a way to reset all SMART scores, and I will get back to you on that because I am not totally sure. So I'm going to get back with you about games on the iPads and resetting all SMART scores. Okay, real-time diagnostics. So some of our schools use this, most of them don't, I will say that. But one thing I will say is we have a school that really uses this diagnostic and uses IXL heavily. And we have seen some crazy growth in their NWEA scores. So there's definitely correlation between taking that real-time diagnostic, regularly using IXL, and higher achievement or higher growth for students. So just keep that in mind. The IXL diagnostic does take a little bit of time, but you don't have to do it in one sitting, which is fantastic. So they suggest taking maybe 2, 3, 4 days, and having students take 20 to 25 minutes each day to answer some questions in that real-time diagnostic. What it's going to do is it will give the students a set of questions, and then it's going to narrow down to figure out exactly where that student lines up in that skill. So if I go here to assessment, this is where I'm going to see the diagnostic. When I think Tyler has maybe gotten in here and answered some questions. So what he's going to see here is all of the areas in math, and then he'll be able to answer some of those questions. So it looks like for most of them, it says keep diagnosing to reveal your score. It looks like maybe in language arts, he answered enough questions for this to be his score. So it's giving him a score and it's giving him a recommended skill from that score. So these are going to be leveled for your students, not specifically what you're teaching in class, but maybe some things that they may need to work on. I have seen this, Jody, this was in a middle school. It was in a middle school that they used that diagnostic. I believe it was like part of a homeroom, or maybe a teacher that said, hey, you know what, I'm just going to take a few minutes and we're going to do this diagnostic and then see what levels the students are at. So this right here, keep your real-time diagnostic up to date. You can see now it's got a star next to it. That's actually going to show up on my students' dashboards. So this may be like a good thing for my students to do as we start the school year. You can see now over that study plan, I've got keep your real-time diagnostic up to date. So he can step into the arena and then it's going to take him to the diagnostic. It's just going to take me here. So they can take the diagnostic as many times as they want. They can just continue answering questions, but it's going to narrow down those skills suggested for them. And then it gives you some really good analytics and reporting just to get an idea of like where your students might be at in their work. Okay, this is a little bonus here. So that was our last regular tip. I want to go through some bonus tips here. And this one is going to be in our settings. So this is really good information because there's a lot of things that I've shared today. If I go to profile and settings, you can see here, I've got teaching settings. That's where we're going to kind of focus our efforts right now. Teaching settings. Okay, first thing is, do I want to hide the grade levels? We have seen in the past where students knowing what grade level they're working at might be a little embarrassing for them. And so they don't want the other students to see what grade levels they're working. So I can choose to hide this for all students or for a particular student. If I do hide those grade levels, it's going to give me this hidden grade level map is just going to show me those levels and what grade the student would be. So it's not like super cryptic, starts with A and moves all the way down. Hiding the timer, again, as somebody who may be a little anxious if I see a timer and how long it's been that I've been working on a skill, I don't want to see that. This is actually going to hide the timer on any skills that the students are practicing. So if you remember, we saw the skill, and then over on the right-hand side, it showed me like how many questions I've answered, what my SMART score is, and it also showed me a timer. I can say I want to hide the timer for these students or all of my students. Extend audio supports. So audio supports are going to extend to grades 3 through 10, and then additional after that. And for the real-time diagnostic. So if you remember that little blue speaker icon that we had, that is going to be there for any of those grades K through 2. But if I want to extend that audio support for particular students, so my middle school teachers, you may want to listen up for this. If you have students on your roster that might need additional audio support, maybe you don't want this for every student, but you do want it for particular students, you're able to actually click that on for each of those students individually. Translation support. So this is new. This is actually one of the new things, and it's now available in 50 languages. So if I enable the translation support for a particular student, I can also choose what language they're going to have. So I go through here and I choose the language that my students need and then click that check mark. And now I've got audio support and I've got multilingual support. So two really huge updates in here that we have available to our students. Hide the scratch pad. This is just like there's a little pencil down at the bottom of each skill and it allows students to kind of write out their work. We have seen that it might not be the most productive thing for some students and they're just using it as a drawing pad. So we can always disable that for the students. And then hide games. So I already showed you that games area. It's got educational games that are tied to those grade level skills. But if I don't want those available for my students, or maybe I just don't want them available for like a little while, I can actually hide those games for everyone. Maybe I've got one kid who clearly cannot handle having games show up in IXL. So I'm going to hide it for them. And then I can always re-enable it at a time when they should be able to play those games. Okay, that is actually the last tip that I have. I want to thank you guys for joining me today.